Everyone, I can see people are getting connected, so I'll give you all a second to connect your audio. But thank you and welcome, and thanks for joining us. Can we get the presentation started? Awesome. Terrific. Wonderful. Well, this is one of our favorite events of the year. We get to hear a bunch of updates from our N group partners, our National Association partners. We have today NARU, NASIO, NCSL, NGA, NASUCA, and NACA, the full team here. So we're really excited. If you haven't met me yet, I'm Carrie Worthington, and I'm part of the NARU team, but I'm assigned to the National Council on Electricity Policy Project. With me today is my project coordinator, Jessica Diaz. So if you do have any questions, you can send them to her or I. She can especially help you with any tech issues, but we can go to the next slide. As you have been alerted by Zoom, the meeting is being recorded. Again, you can type any questions during the live webinar to Jessica or I, and we will try our best to get to any kind of clarifying questions, or our N group partners can chat with you in the chat box. After the webinar, we will send you the recording, and anyone who has pre-registered has received the slides already. So thank you for doing that. Also, we have a listserv where we provide updates on a regular basis. So if you're not on that list already, please email me or begin a My Neighborhood account to join that. We can flip to the next slide where we'll see the agenda. Great, it says 8 minutes here, but everyone will give about 5 to 6 minutes of updates and hopefully squeeze in a question or two, especially at the end. First will be Danielle Sass-Burnett from NARU, then Kirsten Verklos from NASIO, Dan Loff from NGA, Aaron Ray from NCSL, David Springy from NASUCA, and finally Miles Keogh from NACA. We can flip to the next slide. If this is your first time joining a NCEP meeting or the National Council on Electricity Policy meeting, it is a peer learning platform for all of our member groups to come together to explore various aspects of the electricity grid. And right now we are considering the topic of the multi-year theme to be the transmission distribution system and moving into the customer system as well. And we've been exploring this through the lens of planning, operations, and markets. We have held our annual meetings around these topics particularly, and all of our resources are available on electricitypolicy.org. We would also love to thank the Department of Energy for their ongoing support. And again, NCEP is an affiliate project of NARU. You can flip to the next slide, where I will welcome a few new members to the NCEP Executive Committee. This is essentially our steering committee, and they help us with the direction of the council. We have 2 new members, Jennifer Easler, who's a consumer advocate from Iowa, and Chair Marissa Haslick-Gillette from the Connecticut Public Utility Regulatory Authority. We'd also like to take more than a moment, but multiple moments to thank President Paul Shalander for his leadership throughout the past several years. He joined as president in 2018, and we've held such a great program with him leading us through that. So thank you so much, Paul, for your leadership there, and we hope to continue working with you in the future. Otherwise, our other about 9 committee members are there on the right-hand side, and they are one from each region and as well as one from each of the affiliate membership type groups. We can move to the next slide. In September, we held our 2021 annual meeting on coordinated electricity planning. That was the planning aspect of the T&D intersection. The recordings and presentations are available, as well as the meeting summary. And we have also held a few different webinars over the past 6 months, one of them being a regional initiatives from the U.S. Department of Energy. That was in November. In August, we held a webinar on approaches to maximizing existing transmission capacity. And then finally, in October, we held a multi-part series on innovations in electricity modeling training, and that was in partnership with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. So thank you, Lisa Schwartz, for working with us on that. those are broken out into about 1.5 hour training modules, and all of those recordings and presentations are also available. The link should be live in the slide deck that you have. Over the course of this next year, we are preparing for our annual meeting to take place in September. A abstract submission process will open sometime in the springtime, and we will collect your ideas and hear your feedback on what we should be discussing at that time. But feel free to, of course, send me an email at any time. We will repeat this resources for decision makers, formerly called coordination call, in June as a part of our mid-year update. I'm not seeing any questions from the chat, so we can move to the next slide. Other available and upcoming resources, I mentioned the 2021 meeting summary, but also from our collection of annual meetings since 2018, we've been collecting transmission distribution resources and examples and case studies on planning, operations, and markets. And after this 2021 meeting, we have over 200 of these resources. So if there is something that you're looking for that is not in there, please reach out to us and we'll try to track something down. But otherwise, there's plenty of resources for you to peruse over your time. And if you know anyone who's doing any kind of research, this would be a really good first stop for them on these types of topics. We also have what we call the mini guide series, which is when we take multiple perspectives from states and state agencies and try to really highlight some really good examples of how they work well together. So we have published a local government and PUC's mini guide, a state agency coordination during energy related emergencies mini guide, and then PUCs with state legislators and PUCs with state energy officials. Within the next couple of weeks, you will be seeing some announcements on our listserv for a consumer and PUC mini guide, a state and regional transmission operator mini guide, and PUCs and siting authorities mini guide. So we are really excited to continue this mini guide series into the future. And I'll let you know that starting in the springtime, we will be having another mini guide on PUCs and electric vehicles and Department of Transportation at the state level. We are looking to do more of these. So if you would like to reach out to us with any topics that we should be exploring, please feel free. We are open ears. So and we share these ideas also with our end group partners on the call today. So thank you everyone for being here. I will flip to the next slide and actually quickly introduce Danielle Sass-Burnett, who is the director of the Center for Partnerships and Innovation at NARU, and she will guide you all through NARU's updates. So Danielle.
Thank you very much, Carrie. Thanks for that great overview for everyone on NCEP. Lots of exciting things available. I am happy to be here talking from the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. We can go to the next slide. For those who don't know NARU, we are the membership organization for the 50 states and US territories who public officials who oversee electric, gas, water, and telecommunications utilities. Next slide. And as Carrie said, I'm the director of the Center for Partnerships and Innovation, which is the state technical assistance team, and we support the commissioners, commission staff across the country by developing resources, providing support, delivering training, and working with all of you to make sure that they have access to the best information possible to inform their decision making. We do update a fact sheet about the most recent publications, events, and virtual learning opportunities multiple times a year. And this is available on the naruc.org/CPI for Center for Partnerships and Innovation website right up at the top near quick links. We only have a few minutes today, so I'll go quickly. Next slide, please. I'm going to mention to you some recently available resources since we last offered this presentation last summer, and then talk about a few recordings that we have, actually quite a few recordings of recent webinars that may be of interest, and give you a preview of a couple of upcoming webinars and some forthcoming publications and other activities. So first up is recently released resources. In the fall, we released a set of 3 different publications related to coal transition and coal retirements. The first is a paper that examined different regulatory approaches to considering economic development impacts of explicitly coal retirements, and there are a number of case studies around coal retirements, but it actually was a comprehensive review of the charges to utility commissions around their requirement or ability to consider economic development in regulatory considerations. So relevant more broadly than just related to coal retirement, so that was the focus. There was also a companion publication published around the economic impacts of coal producing communities of retirements that discusses environmental justice considerations and also opportunities for transition to clean energy jobs, and a review of federal programs that provide support for those kinds of transitions. And then third, there was a comprehensive review of coal to hydrogen opportunities and challenges, including discussions of the many colors of hydrogen and what kinds of opportunities there might be to make carbon-free hydrogen from coal with biomass and carbon capture and other strategies. So those are available on the website, and the version of the slides that are posted has clickable links for all of these resources. There is a second set of resources. Carrie previewed one of them just a few moments ago, related to stakeholder engagement and public interest involvement in decision-making at commissions. The first was a 50-state review of state approaches to intervenor compensation. And specifically, this found that although there are about a dozen or so states that have some kind of intervenor compensation on their books, which is an opportunity to provide funding to allow groups and individuals to represent consumer interests in front of the commission, only about 6 operate programs currently and actively, though there are two more states that passed legislation last year and are setting programs up right now. And we also held a webinar on that just last month. And the mini guide on utility commissions and consumer advocates, with thanks to David Springy and his members at NASIO for their partnership in developing that guide with interviews from consumer advocates and utility commissioners and commission staff from 4 different states. And then the third set of resources we wanted to highlight today is around resilience. One is a very nice federal funding catalog that offers different programs that one can go to, whether you are a commission, a utility, an energy office, another interested party in the state who is interested in developing projects to support resilience. This is both post-disaster recovery and pre-disaster resilience investments. We have a lessons learned report around ongoing responses to the COVID-19 crisis, which are, of course, still not out of, that specifically reviews different approaches that were used to pandemic response around emergency operations and communication, around digitization trends and impacts on vulnerable customers, with particular attention to the disconnection moratorium and the financial impacts of COVID on many different groups. And then finally, a paper about regulatory considerations for utility investments in defense energy resilience, or investments in military installation resilience, specifically related to energy. And this also touches on issues beyond just what utility commissions might find valuable. It includes case studies and discussions of benefits of improving resilience and who pays. So I will move to the next couple slides with my remaining time. We have held, like everyone, many webinars over the last couple of years now. And we wanted to just quickly flag for you that we hold a monthly innovation webinar series. The next event will be a week from today at this time slot, and I'll provide a link. We have recordings and PowerPoint presentations for all of these. They cover, as you can see, things from vegetation management and resilience, and thinking about the economic impacts of outages, to stakeholder engagement, a couple of sessions recently on electric vehicles, microgrid tariffs and access in low-income communities, and also nuclear energy. So all of these links are live and you can find the recordings. Next slide. The last thing I wanted to flag for everyone on this call was some new projects and forthcoming resources. The first 2 items in the row here are those upcoming webinars. Next Thursday, we will talk about non-energy benefits in commission decision-making and what counts, and flag a number of states where non-energy benefits are being incorporated into benefit cost analyses. And then in February, we'll talk about black start considerations, which is restarting the grid in a highly renewable future. We also have various webinar series related to, we also have various publications underway, and we'll be releasing, the rest of these are publication titles, a couple around cybersecurity and energy security, valuing resilience for microgrids, discussion of low carbon fuels in natural gas context, nuclear as an energy resource, clean energy resource, resilience codes and standards and their applicability to federal funding programs, and then a couple more mini guides, as Carrie noted, that we'll make available through the NCEP community. And then I did want to mention as well a couple of items that aren't written down, aren't specific publications, but if any of them pique your interest, please flag them for me in the Q&A or the chat, and I can provide more information in writing, or feel free to reach out and we can talk one-on-one. Those three are a grid data sharing collaborative, supporting the development of frameworks around sharing of grid data to support things like hosting capacity analysis and maps. Secondly, some new work on DER integration and compensation, which is being led by my colleague Tanya Pozlowski at NARU and NCEP in concert with Kirsten Verklaas, who you hear from NASIO. And then exploring cybersecurity for solar and EVs and other distributed resources. And then finally, I wanted to mention that NARUC's Winter Policy Summit will be held in person and hybrid on February 13th to the 16th. And I will put a link in the chat for the registration. Early bird ends this Friday. And it's going to be 3 days of really great sessions, many of which touch on topics that we discuss as NCEP. So I think I've used my time, and I will hand it back over to Carrie for our next speaker. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Danielle. We did receive one question in the Q&A. So panelists, if you're able to address that in the chat, that would be terrific. But we will move on to Kirsten Verklaas from the National Association of State Energy Offices, and she works with energy office directors throughout the country, and she is very excited to give some updates to you all. So we can move to her slides, and Kirsten, if you can pull up your video, that would be great.
Sure. Thank you, Carrie. Hi, everyone. My name is Kirsten Verklaas. I'm the Managing Director for Electricity and Energy Security at the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASIO. Next slide, please. So just like Danielle, I'll give you an overview over who we are, and then go into a little bit of what we've done in the past since we last had a webinar at NCEP, and then kind of the outlook of what's happening in the next few months. So NASIO is the nonprofit association that represents the governor-designated energy officials from each of the states, the District of Columbia, and the territories. And we provide resources to our members as well as represent them before Congress and the administration. Next slide, please. So this is just an overview of our program areas. You can see we work on a lot of things ranging from buildings, electricity, climate financing, workforce resilience. We also have an equity committee. We look very specifically at supporting our state energy offices on state energy planning, both in terms of security as well as overall energy planning. We work on innovation and transportation and solar as well as policy. Not all of these are committees, but a lot of them have committees that are led by our members and that drive the program areas. And then we have overarching priorities such as resilience or innovation that touch on all kinds of our programs and committees. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to spotlight a couple of the programs and activities that we have happening and are ongoing that are kind of the focus of NASIO at this point. We've been really actively involved in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act implementation. As you know, this has passed in November, excuse me. And we've held a number of workshops and webinars and engagements with our members to really talk about what this means for the state energy offices in particular, but others as well. We also on our website, and I'll put the link in the chat once I'm done presenting, have a hub that includes all kinds of information on what the IIJA means for a lot of different program areas, electricity, buildings, transportation, etc. And the IIJA will also be a large focus for our Energy Policy Outlook Conference in February, which I'll mention in a minute. We also have an ongoing project, or two ongoing projects in the solar energy. We have our CATS project together with NARU, where we work on cybersecurity considerations for solar. And there we accomplished a literature review as well as a roadmap, which really looks at what kind of needs are at the state level and specifically for state energy offices and PUCs when considering solar cybersecurity. And then for our inclusive shared solar initiative, there are 4 states or 3 states and the District of Columbia that work on developing innovative pilot programs to finance low and moderate income solar, community solar installations. And they're developing state implementation plans, which will be advancing to phase 2 in spring 2022. In terms of our EV work and transportation work, we are hosting a series of virtual workshops for state energy offices and other state agencies to build relationships and understand what is needed to build out EV infrastructure. And this will culminate in an online EV planning tool, which is a repository of resources and tools that states may use to plan for and implement EV charging programs, especially using the IIJA funds. And we're working on that with the DOE's Vehicle Technology Office and NREL, as well as a lot of other partners on this call, NARU, NGA, NACA, and some of the other organizations. In terms of resilience, I think that NGA will touch on that, but we have just published a large paper on resilience planning and funding that is now on NASIO's and NGA's website, which really highlights some of the innovative planning and financing options that there are for resilience activities. In terms of energy justice and equity, we're working with NGA and NARU on a roundtable on energy justice, and we've also just released an RFP for our energy justice and resilience work, where we're going to look at how can we incorporate energy justice into our ongoing resilience work and planning and responding to energy emergencies and disasters. And then finally, in our partnership with NARU, we work on Grid Interactive Efficient Buildings Working Group. We recently held 2 forums, which included presentations on DOE's Connected Communities. And then in that area, we're also planning a series of bi-monthly working group state forums to cover a number of topics such as the rate design, demand flexibility, interaction with building codes, etc. And then Danielle also touched on the microgrid working group. There we will be releasing 2 papers, and we will have a forum in the spring to really have a workshop and delve deep into some of the policy framework work that we're planning for later this year. Next slide, please. This is all the publications that we have issued since last summer. So it's a flurry, and I'm not going to go over a lot of these. I will put the link to NASIO's publication in the chat, but just like NARU, we've also done a paper on the COVID-19 response. We've worked on a paper on crisis communication. We have several papers on workforce and in the transportation sector. I mentioned the resilience sector already. We have papers on diversity, hydrogen, CCUS, Black Start, and electricity and water interdependency. So there's lots that we covered over the past few months. So I'd invite you to go to the website once I put that in the chat. Next slide, please. Just a note on some upcoming events and activities. We will have our NASIO 2022 Energy Policy Outlook Conference in February 8th to 11th. It is in person in DC. And we're also continuing, as I mentioned, our EV workshop series. The next two workshops are on corridor planning webinars on January 19th and 26th. And you can go to the website there, that's a live link, and sign up if you're interested for those. And then finally, in terms of publications, the Unlocking Resilience with Microgrids paper together with NARU imminent. And then we will also have another paper on microgrids and renewable energy. How can we power microgrids with clean energy and still achieve some of the resilience goals? We will also have the EV planning tool that I mentioned, and two papers on financing, the NASIO taxonomy of public building financing mechanisms, and a play sheet on financing program responses to the COVID-19 downturn. And last slide, this is my contact information if you have any questions. Kelsey Jones works with me on electricity and energy security, but I also put there the NASIO staff list because clearly this isn't all just me, but an amazing team at NASIO that works on all these kind of issues. So if you have any questions that aren't electricity and energy security related, I invite you to just contact my colleagues directly. And with that, I will turn it back over to Carrie.
Great. Thank you so much, Kirsten. That was a great overview. And thanks for sharing some links on how we can contact you. Next up is Dan Loff from the National Governors Association. He's a program director there for energy. They have a few different types of departments there, but he's with energy, and we are thrilled to have him today. So Dan, take it away.
Fantastic. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Like Carrie said, I'm Dan Loff. I'm the Program Director for Energy at the National Governors Association. It is good to be on the line with all of you, and thanks again to NARU for hosting us for this meeting. So going to the next slide, one after that. Perfect. So just for a quick background, for those of you who aren't familiar with NGA, we are the nonpartisan voice of the nation's 55 state and territory governors. So we've been around for over 100 years at this point, and we do a lot to coordinate and convene the governors around a wide range of issues. We have a team that supports them in front of Congress and the federal government, but on my side, work in the Center for Best Practices, where we provide policy support for the governors and for their staff on a range of issues. So my team and I work on energy, but we also have teams that do broader infrastructure, environment, healthcare, public safety, cybersecurity, workforce, and a number of others. So I'm going to start off, going to the next slide, by sharing some of our recent resources that we posted since the last time we all convened. And after that, I will then turn to more of a forward-looking view to our 2022 priorities and talk about some of the projects that we have coming up that may be of interest to those of you on the line. So first off is a paper that, going to the next slide, is actually the paper that Kirsten just mentioned. So trying to string these presentations together a bit. It's the new resource from NGA and NASIO on state governance planning and financing to enhance energy resilience. So it provides a deep dive into new ways that state leaders are structuring energy resilience governance and broader resilience governance, whether it's through state resilience officers, leadership at the agency level, or other means, and then dives deep into strategies states can employ to incorporate energy resilience planning into broader state planning, and identifies a number of funding and financing mechanisms that states can leverage for energy resilience investments. Next slide. Our other big release from the last month is our Executive Authority During Energy Emergencies Roadmap for Governors. This is a refresh of the 2018 roadmap that we developed to really help governors understand what authorities are beneficial and what executive authorities they may need to facilitate rapid response to an energy emergency or an energy outage and restoration of that energy source. So in addition to updating a number of areas of that paper, we also added some modules to answer questions about what additional authorities governors may need if the energy emergency occurs concurrent with a public health emergency, not unlike the incidents that we've experienced over the last 2 years. So hopefully this is something that is helpful, not just for governors, but to all of you in your state roles, since I know energy emergency response involves individuals from across state government and the private sector. Next slide. We also have a new resource on energy efficiency policy and planning. It's a toolkit for governors that goes through a real deep dive on energy efficiency. What are the various programs that states can employ to expand efficiency? What are some new technologies hitting the market? And importantly, what role does efficiency play in the context of some of the broader energy transition that we are all tracking and pursuing nowadays? So how is efficiency really evolving as the energy system evolves? And going to the next slide, the last resource I'll flag is our Energy Markets 101 landing page. This came as a result of a number of questions that we've been receiving from our membership around regional energy markets and state federal jurisdictions with state regulators and FERC. Really trying to understand how a number of the changes that we're seeing in regional markets and the cases in front of FERC might impact states. So the resource just provides some real good in-depth background on electricity markets that would be of interest to state policymakers, including a series of webinars that you can find in the link at the bottom of the slide, in which a number of expert speakers really provide some good background for state officials. So going to the next slide, I'm looking forward to, despite what this slide says, it is looking forward to 2022. I will eventually catch up with the calendar. But going to the next slide here, the first area that I wanted to touch on is the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We are also tracking this very closely for our members. It's a big focus of theirs currently, as it is, I'm sure, for all of you. We actually held an infrastructure summit in December in Annapolis, where we convened a number of governors, state officials, federal leaders, and experts from the private sector to begin exploring what implementation of the IIJA may look like and what opportunities are there to deploy this significant increase in funding. Energy was a focus along with transportation, broadband, and other areas. So we're going to be building on that in the coming year to continue coordinating with our membership on these areas, also coordinating with other state associations. It's going to be a focus at NGA's winter meeting at the end of January. And coming soon, we are, I think, imminently about to release a new landing page for governors and for state officials that's going to compile quite a few resources. So I know Kirsten mentioned hers, or mentioned NASIO's, and a number of you may have similar resources that you're pulling together. If you'd like us to showcase or to link to those on our site as well, just shoot me an email, and I'll make sure that we're compiling the best information from across the web for governors. Next slide. I'll touch quickly on a handful of the projects that we have coming up here as well. So related to energy transitions and grid modernization, we'll host a learning lab for a new cohort of states in summer 2022, as well as do deep dives into transmission and energy resource siting and permitting, as well as energy justice and equitable deployment of distributed energy resources, the latter in partnership with NASIO and NARU. We have ongoing work on nuclear energy for the states, including a learning collaborative that we are just wrapping up, and that's an online series, so I believe those recordings should be posted soon if they aren't already. That's going to be followed by an experts roundtable exploring carbon pricing and commercial nuclear waste concerns that the states have and solutions to address those. Later in the year, we're going to continue to dive deep into that topic, and we'll shift focus to an exploration of nuclear power generation in the context of broader energy transitions and integrated energy systems with new resources. The last topic on this slide is a new project of ours that we're in the process of kicking off with our secondary education and workforce and economic development teams to support energy producing states and communities, so those that produce coal, natural gas, and oil through the energy transition. So understand what the roles for fossil fuels look like and what are viable economic development and workforce development strategies to support those communities as more clean energy comes online. Next slide. Energy security and resilience is also a big continued focus of ours. I'm going to, in the interest of time, cherry pick a few topics here, since I know these slides are going to be posted. We are going to be diving deeper into how governors can support vulnerable and at-risk communities before and during energy emergencies. We're currently working with a cohort of 4 states that participated in the GridX6 exercise to develop from some state-focused after-action resources. So a report, and we'll host a website, or we'll host a workshop in March. Another bigger effort that we have here in partnership with NASIO is the development of a crisis communications playbook for governors. Well, I should say for governors and state energy officials, in particular focusing on strategies for a no-notice event like a cyber attack or an earthquake. And going to the next slide, we also offer a number of opportunities for technical assistance for states that you all can take advantage of. We have our annual Governor's Advisors Energy Policy Institute that will be in June or July of this year to be scheduled. We've been participating alongside NCSL in the Legislative Energy Horizons Institute. This past year was the first year that we brought executive branch officials to that event alongside state legislators, and we're very pleased with how that went and think it's a great opportunity for continued joint learning. We offer on-demand technical assistance for states that will continue, and then as the year progresses, we are going to be looking forward to 2022 elections and 2023 gubernatorial transitions. We have 36 states and elections taking place in 36 states and 3 territories. So next year will be a big year as a result. And going to the next slide, this is my contact information. I can't take responsibility for all the resources that were shared here. It's very much a team effort, but if you have questions about any of them, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if I don't have an answer, I will connect you with the right person on our team. So with that, thank you, Carrie, for the opportunity, and all of you for your time. I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Good to hear that you're all involved in such diverse topics there. So thank you for sharing all of that. And again, all the presentations are posted, and I'll send another chat with the link for that. Moving to the next slide or two, we will bring in the Associate Director for Energy, Environment, and Transportation from the National Council of State Legislators, Aaron Ray. So we're excited to have him. So Aaron, you're up.
Thank you, Carrie, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to speak about NCSL's energy program, some of our recent work, and upcoming activities that may be of interest. Next slide, please. And the next slide. As you're likely aware, NCSL is a bipartisan, member-driven organization that represents the legislatures in the states, territories, and commonwealths of the U.S. Our energy program offers support for legislators and legislative staff, including state-by-state analysis of energy issues, technical assistance, responses to policy questions, and research on energy issues. We also work with members of the state executive branches, regulators, media, industry, and academia, so please don't hesitate to reach out to me if there's anything we can do to assist you. I will note that NCSL does not engage in any direct advocacy at the state level, nor do we endorse particular policies or legislation. We do, however, represent the interests of state legislators in front of Congress and the administration. And our energy program facilitates a number of groups that provide opportunities for education and collaboration among legislators from across the country. Our task force on energy supply is a group of 38 legislators and staff from 24 states, Puerto Rico and Quebec. The task force meets twice a year to discuss emerging energy issues. We also host, as Dan mentioned, the Legislative Energy Horizon Institute, which is a 2-session annual energy boot camp for newer state legislatures. Finally, our Nuclear Legislative Working Group brings together legislators from states that host nuclear generation facilities or have nuclear cleanup sites to discuss policies to manage the existing nuclear fleet and support the cleanup of decommissioned sites. Next slide, please. So this is our team, includes myself, Program Principal Dan Shea, and Policy Associates Austin Iglehart and Christopher McMichael. My background includes time as a Deputy Director for Policy in the Colorado Governor's Office, as well as the Federal Office of Management and Budget, where I worked on Department of the Interior, Energy, and Natural Resource issues. Dan Shea is our longest tenured member of the team and specializes in nuclear energy policy and electricity regulation. Austin Iglehart is our lead on oil and gas issues, as well as electric vehicle policy. And Christopher McMichael focuses on state renewable energy policies and energy justice. We're also supported by 2 of NCSL's Washington, D.C.-based staff, Ben Hush and Kristen Hildreth. If you'd like any support from NCSL, I encourage you to contact me and I can connect you to the appropriate staff person. Next slide, please. So I want to talk for a minute about some of our recent resources. Our team has produced a number of resources recently that may be of interest to this group. I've included links to these on a later slide if you're looking for them. We've just published a primer for state legislators on electricity markets, for legislators both in states operating under markets as well as states considering expanded regional markets. We also developed a summary, as other groups have, of state legislative responses to the impacts of COVID on the energy sector. That resource focuses on how legislators interacted with the executive branches in their states, as well as how legislators addressed affordability and access challenges during the pandemic. We also published a guide to lessons learned from the Colonial Pipeline attack to help legislators better prevent and prepare for cybersecurity incidents in their states, focused on the energy sector. We also just recently released a video focused on energy sector cybersecurity that features DOE Deputy Assistant Secretary Kate Marks. So we're experimenting with additional venues to reach out to folks. We also regularly distribute our monthly plugged-in newsletter, our quarterly News Reactor newsletter, which focuses on nuclear policy. We conduct policy analysis and tracking of a variety of energy topics, and we maintain our energy state bill tracking database and an energy storage database. Those databases include thousands of state bills in a number of energy areas. Next slide, please. We have a number of upcoming activities and publications you may be interested in. Our Nuclear Legislative Working Group, our Task Force on Energy Supply, and the Legislative Energy Horizon Institute will all be meeting this year. Many of the dates are still TBD, but we're looking forward to getting those groups back together in person throughout the spring, summer, and fall. We're also planning, with support from NARU, NASIO, and NGA, a regional meeting to bring together legislators, governor's office staff, energy office staff, and regulators to discuss ways to better prepare for and manage energy emergencies. We'll be hosting our annual Natural Resources and Infrastructure Spring webinar series. They'll have a number of energy and environment sessions. We're also planning a podcast series around the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and there'll be some energy editions of that podcast as well coming this spring and summer. Finally, we'll soon be publishing our annual review of legislative energy trends focused on the 2021 legislative session. Each year we look across state legislative sessions and pull together some of the trends that we're seeing, and that report will be published soon, so keep an eye out for that. Next slide, please. This slide just has some links to some of the resources I've discussed. If there's anything else that you need, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and I can connect you to the appropriate staff or find the appropriate resource. So with that, I will thank you again for the opportunity to join you and turn it back to Carrie.
Thank you so much, Aaron. Great overview, appreciate that. We're gonna move to, we have 2 more speakers for you before the top of the hour. The next one is Executive Director David Springy from the National Association of Consumer Advocates, Utility Consumer Advocates. So.
Well, hi, everyone. Good to see everybody again. David Springy from NASUCA, National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates. We are 59 consumer advocate members operating in 44 states. The the vast majority of our members are the statutory advocates, so we're written into law to go in front of the public utility commissions and advocate for a variety of consumers depending on how the statute is set up. Our job here in Washington is to try and help our members and facilitate and provide information of use to their advocacy at the state level. I want to thank NARU and NCEP for putting together these webinars. I've been through a number of these, and it's always great to catch up with the other national association groups and see what sort of resources they are putting out. They're great stuff, and we find ourselves as one of the more modest national associations, more modest in staff and resources. We are, in fact, a information taker. So we send a lot of the information from the other end groups straight out to our membership too, to provide the resources that we can't perhaps generate internally. So great work, and it's great to work with everyone. Great to see everyone again. In terms of NASUCA, what we have focused on in the fall is a series of Lawrence Berkeley National Lab training sessions. We did a 4-part training session last fall. We did a retirement for baseload, or planning for retirement of baseload resources, automated DER response, integration of DER resources under FERC Order 2222, and then finally training on maximizing the existing transmission capacity. Hold on, did I lose my, apologize, I don't know what happened. I lost my video there. So we had a 4-part webinar series sponsored through Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. You can find that. I didn't put links on this presentation, but you can find that on our website, nasuka.org. Easy to remember, and it's just under the resource tabs, along with a whole series of grid modernization webinar training sessions that we've held historically. Last fall, we also had our annual meeting. For those that you don't know, NASUCA co-locates its annual November meeting with NARU. So if any of you go to the NARU meeting in November, look around, NASUCA is always there. Again, November was modest for us. We had a very small in-person meeting in Louisville, and then ran a virtual session every afternoon for the members that could not attend. It was a great session. It worked out great. We are currently, as we speak, putting the finishing touches on a Lawrence Berkeley National Lab Future Electric Utility Regulation Series paper. This paper will be about innovation in the electric utility space. So we're attempting to look out 20 years along with some other partners to see what we think innovation will bring in terms of technology and changes in regulation and changes to consumer advocacy. So I think they're trying to get that paper published and out in time for the February NARU meeting, February Policy Summit. So I'll look for that coming soon. And finally, in terms of events looking forward, our June mid-year meeting will be in Indianapolis, June 12th through the 15th. If you have any interest in that, please drop me a note, just david.springy@nasuka.org. My contact information is there. Happy to get you hooked up with that. We hope that it will be in person, as everyone that plans meetings. I think we've all aged a decade in the last 3 years, but we hope we'll be in person in Indianapolis. And then obviously next November, looking way forward, the NARU and NASUCA annual meetings in November are slated to be in person in New Orleans. So can't have a bad meeting there. So I hope everyone will join us. Again, thank you to everyone that provides such great information and shares that information among these national groups. We really do appreciate it. That's all I have for today.
Thank you so much, David. That was a great overview too. So thank you for being here with us. We have up next, we have Miles Keogh from the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, and then we might be able to squeeze in a question or two. So keep them coming.
All right,
Miles?
friends, it's so nice to see so many familiar names, and I really appreciate the invitation to chat with y'all. NAACE is the National Nonpartisan Nonprofit Association of 153 city, county, and state agencies that implement the Clean Air Act. We're a little different than every other end group that's spoken today in that we're not a technical assistance organization in the same way that, we don't take grant funding to provide write papers or those kinds of things, but we do some stuff that serves the clean air agencies. And I think I'll talk through a few of them that our Venn diagram doesn't exactly sit on top of the energy Venn diagram, but there's probably some things that we're working on that are right at the edges of those things that may be food for thought and maybe areas for future coordination. This week, we've been up to our eyeballs working on some mutual aid work that I put into place a couple of years back. The Marshall Fire in Colorado that tore through Boulder County really affected our local agency there. And we've been doing a bunch of work with wildfire information sharing and response. And so we probably, y'all have a bunch of hands and hooks and loops on wildfire and on those kinds of mutual aid processes. We're trying to figure out how to get a bunch of air quality monitors and sensors to Boulder County and how to coordinate with them based on what we've learned mostly in California, but in lots of places in the West about communicating air quality to the public. We're also doing a bunch of stuff with monitors and sensors with some money that we worked with Congress to try and put into place with the Stimulus Act, the American Rescue Plan, trying to figure out how to coordinate the deployment of monitors and sensors and how to integrate those into data visualization systems. I think y'all have some experience with that from integrating smart grid sensors into y'all's systems. We're going through some of those same questions. On the horizon in Congress, we've been working to try and figure out the provisions of the Build Back Better Act. If y'all want to talk to me in the future about what's in there, we think there's about $5.5 billion for greenhouse gas planning and implementation. A lot of that will go through clean air agencies. We're doing a bunch of work on trying to work with EPA to direct the outcomes of their clean car and clean truck rules. Where that intersects with y'all is probably we're trying to figure out about how to deal with EVs and state implementation plans. And as part of the emission reductions, those EVs run on electricity. This is the National Council on Electricity Policy. So there's probably some interface somewhere in there. And it might be at the intersection of IRPs and EVs, but that's something that we're trying to figure out. We're also trying to get some better handle on how EVs fit into our emissions modeling as the state and local agencies try to figure out their compliance with the National Ambient Air Quality Standards and with state goals that are driving greenhouse gas emissions reductions. I am up to my eyeballs in writing comments to EPA on their new source performance standards for methane from the oil and gas sector. Y'all probably care a lot about things that affect pipeline capacity. And one of the big provisions of that is the transmission of associated gas from oil production into gas markets. And one of the things that we know about gas pipelines is that there can be physical availability and not contractual availability. And associated gas may not be able to take a ride on existing pipes, and new pipes may have interesting FERC interactions and things like that. There may be congestion when there's competition between associated gas, power plant destined gas, stuff like that. So we're trying to figure out all that stuff as we're cooking up these comments. And I think there's probably some areas of intersection with y'all in that too. The power plant greenhouse gas rules are out there somewhere. EPA says that they're hard at work writing them. The Supreme Court's going to certainly have some effect on that. Petitioner briefs in West Virginia versus EPA have been filed. Respondent briefs from folks who are on the current EPA side of things will be due in January, February. We'll hear oral arguments in February, and the Supreme Court tends to hold off its decisions till the 11th hour, and their session ends in the summer. So we'll see a Supreme Court ruling that should affect what happens with that power plant rule. We certainly care about that. You guys probably care about that too. We spend a bunch of our time on environmental justice, the same way that I've heard the terms energy justice thrown around. We've done a bunch of survey and technical assistance work on environmental justice. Vulnerable communities bear the brunt of the burden of air pollution, much as they do face the most challenging energy reliability and affordability questions. So we're just trying to figure out how to do what the technical questions are around involving the most vulnerable communities in ways that are truly effective in planning, permitting, enforcement, and those kinds of questions. What is it that an air pollution agency has to do to create meaningful involvement? And what is meaningful involvement? And how do you make it effective and yield emissions reductions of harmful pollutants in those communities without creating burdens on those communities? And so we're doing a bunch of technical assistance to our agencies around what is meaningful involvement in those regulatory processes. And I'm sure all of y'all are hard at work on that as well. So I'm sure that there'll be plenty of other things to talk about. Above all else, it's just fantastic to see some of my friends. I plan on showing up to a few of the meetings that y'all are having soon in February. So you'll see me there with bells on. If you're a participant in one of these meetings too, come on over and stick your hand out if you haven't met me before. And if we're all friends, I'd love to see you there. Thanks, Carrie.
Great, thanks, Miles. Really appreciate that overview as well. I am not seeing any questions come in through the chat box or the Q&A box, but if there's anyone out there with any questions, now is your time. We have about 2 minutes to get to those. Otherwise, we did have a question earlier about the Infrastructure and Jobs Act resources. Danielle responded in the Q&A, and then NCSL, NASIO, and I believe that's it. I thought maybe somebody else submitted a link to their resources that they have on their website. I'm not seeing any questions come through, but I'll give it another just 30 seconds or so. Really appreciate everyone's time here today. Really enjoyed hearing from everybody. Really good to see everybody in the new year. So really glad everyone could make it. And we really hope that you make the most out of all these resources today. The slides are posted. The recording will be posted. Please feel free to share this with your colleagues. This is a really good way for us to get out the information all at one time, instead of having, individual meetings with everybody. So really appreciate everyone's time today, and not seeing any questions. So we'll give you your 2 minutes back, and we'll see you next time. So thanks for being here.